So I was handed this piece of paper about Vicki Sutherland Horton, who comes from Port Townsend, Washington, so I'll read you what she says. Spent her early years aboard her father's commercial gillnet boat as crew and pesky daughter. So welcome, pesky daughter, Vicki Sutherland Horton.
Thank you. Yeah, that works. Pesky came out because I thought, I have to be really truthful here. There were probably a lot of times I was on that boat that he didn't really want me there. You know how it is with teenage girls? And I'd never really thought about that before. So yes, I'm Vicki Sutherland Horton, and I really also want to emphasize, or if not, at least say my own part. I would like to welcome anybody who had any memory of my sister, the right kind of memory, for our memorial for her tomorrow. Sue got me here, and I think, she just bugged me. Oh, you have to come, you have to come. Oh, I'm not a writer, I'm not a writer. Yeah, you have to come, yes you are. Sue believed that everybody had the spirit of being able to put something beautiful on paper. So, 10 years later, here I am. I've been doing this for 10 years. I can hardly believe it. Each year, Mother and I continued our project of using my father's commercial fishing pilot logs to guide and record our conversation about a long ago trip our young family made up the Inside Passage. Mother and I lean over the green frayed, cloth-bound book with the purple embossed words pilot log on the front as she opens to the page where we left off. My mother, white-haired, head bowed, reads every word. Each time before we begin, I remind myself to show only soft edges as I quietly slide my iPad recorder across her oil skin tablecloth, not wanting to interfere with her thoughts, hoping she will add new memories to our family story. It is my desire that by sharing this event of over 60 years ago, my mother and I will make permanent her legacy. This project comes because of the unexpected death of my sister. I know now that my relationship with my mother, knowing her history, is something of deep value. It says here we left Port Townsend for Juneau in April of '55. She reads aloud what I consider to be an exquisite nautical detail, handwritten by my father. With sea captain's precision, he wrote, compass reading 230 degrees, strong flood tide, Hearst Island, port side. My mother was 23 years old. I, their firstborn, was 4 years old, and my brother was in diapers. With the use of my father's logs, old photos, artifacts, and Mom's gauzy remembrances, as well as my own, I hope to share with Mom and to gain a deeper knowledge about some of my earliest memories. I believe that I carry an early understanding of danger brought about by this trip. I also know I became aware of life's magic in people, the forest, and marine life on this trip. Mother hands me a scalloped-edged photo of our boat, the Elaine, taken on the day we left for Alaska from Port Townsend's harbor. It shows the boat's deck lined with fencing made of fishing net. White diapers lay drying on the net drum. An empty high chair stands in the center of the deck. I know that for this trip, my father added miniature bunks, one under each of the 2 V berths, shelves really, both with a sturdy railing to prevent toddlers from rolling out in a heavy sea. Having fished with Father throughout my teenage years, I know the Elaine well. My mother had a small 2-burner oil stove and no source of refrigeration. I ask, Mom, how did you prepare food while on the boat? My favorite meal, I kept it simple, was to cook split pea soup. I stocked up with dried food and canned milk before we left Port Townsend. I was especially worried about running out of milk for you kids. When I arrive for our next meeting, Mother exclaims, "This is fun." She reaches for a coffee I have brought her. "I'm so glad, Mom." I laugh. "I have to confess that I ate your chocolate-covered coffee beans." She laughs too. "You know I'm not a chocolate eater." Then again, opening Dad's pilot log, she exclaims with delight, "Look here, it's your birthday." She turns the log around to show me what my father had written. 5/4/55, second mate's Vicki's birthday. Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Flood tide. Dad noted that we celebrated my 4th birthday at God's Pocket, a protected harbor on an isolated island off the north end of Vancouver Island in British Columbia. God's Pocket offered a grocery store and a necessary fuel dock. My birthday gift was a wind-up metal motorboat that I skippered from shore's edge that quickly became corroded in the salt water. At our following meeting, Mother greets me with the next pilot log already positioned on her neat kitchen table. Today's log entry, 5/7/55, tide to drift and beam, slow swells. Reminds my mother how 3 boats traveling together would sometimes lash their vessels side by side while underway. One skipper could then take the helm, responsibility for all, as together the 3 boats traveled throughout 14-hour days. They ended each day at a safe harbor with names like Friday Harbor, Waterfall, Bella Bella. When not serving as skipper, my father would nap, clean, and manage repairs. He spent time with my brother and me playing games and identifying the rich marine life we passed through and by. I have a photograph on my wall from this trip of Dad and his kids watching from the bow of the Vicki as porpoises danced in our frothy wake. On this day, Dad's log reads, 5/12/55, Seymour Narrows, slack tide. Mother and I knew that Seymour Narrows was known for treacherous swift currents and underwater rocks. I don't see in my father's log when the decision was made to separate the 3 boats. Yet I have carried throughout my life a chilling memory of an event in a place much like the Narrows, although I can't say for sure it occurred specifically at Seymour Narrows. I believe we did separate. For the trip through the Narrows, I was invited to ride aboard the Drift and eat toasted cheese sandwiches with the skipper's wife. We watched from the cabin as my secure home, with my parents aboard, led the way toward the narrow channel. I saw the Vicki enter into what appeared to my child's eyes to be an enormous sea monster-like whirlpool. I still feel the threat of impending doom as I watched the Vicki. I understood at that moment what it meant to be truly separate, vulnerable, and in risk of dying. From the safety of my parents, as they, along with my brother, and their pocket of roiling water circled round and round. I also remember my relief watching the Vicki power her way out of the monstrous vortex of water. "No, it didn't happen that way," my mother tells me. "We powered through the Narrows tied together using the engine strength of our 3 boats to battle the tides." It is a familiar unresolved pattern for Mother and I. She not willing to explore painful events in her life, and I'm driven to know why. My stomach tightens today at this memory, and I have to honor what I physically know to be true. On our 5th project day, my father's log reads, 5/14/55, unnamed location tied to dock. Mother notes that we've left Ketchikan and have parted company with the drift and the beam. We're tied up, although Mother can't remember why, but we're next to an abandoned cannery. She shares that having been on the boat for many days, it was a wonderful time to stretch our legs on the deserted, sun-soaked wooden docks. She shows me a creased photo showing my naked brother, me in white panties, and she in a bathing suit as we waded in our life raft turned wading pool filled with warm salt water. We are sun-browned and naked and laughing. That same afternoon, Mother and I climbed the tall ladder that reached high toward an empty-eyed cannery building. She patted my bottom as we ascended one rung at a time. At the top, we clambered over thick creosote-covered railings, wafting a familiar smell of fuel onto a platform filled with ghosts of cannery workers who had collected and processed fish from the boats below. There is a wooden planked trail that leads Mother and I around the cannery into the Tongass forest. "Where are we going?" I whispered as we stepped under an archway made of devil's clubs, leaves, and cedar tree limbs, all seeming to murmur a welcome. "Just wait, you'll see." We walked a short distance into the dark forest to arrive at a clearing with a small wooden house. A thick-set woman, a kind witch with long gray braids, opened her door. Mother explains. "We're tied up at the dock heading north on our fishing boat, and we heard in Ketchikan that you make moccasins." The woman's face breaks into a grin as she welcomes us into her single-room house. Her deeply lined face is an image I still hold. She gestured me to sit on a quilt-covered chair, the sensation of her holding my bare foot, tickling me as she traced my foot shape on magazine paper, remains nestled in my consciousness. "Come back in 2 days, and I'll have your moccasins ready." 62 years later, my mother puts those same small moccasins aside and opens another pilot's log. "Doesn't say much about it here, but we spent the summer in Juneau while your father fished further up north. Do you remember?" I shake my head, although I have snippets of what I know to be Juneau's muddy streets and a swing set in my memory. What does come to mind is gratitude to have shared a kitchen table journey late in my mother's life. Mother puts the logs back into their bottom drawer. As she does so, I realize that she has had many lives, our trip to Alaska being one, and that when you share a story with others, you can choose what part of that person you prefer to remember. That is why I will forever smile at, and I know her grandchildren will too, her recorded story about onboard diaper care. We all can visualize my mother leaning over the stern, beautifully laughing into the wind, with dark red hair blowing about her face as she swishes a poopy diaper clean.